I'm going to sound very arrogant right now. Oh, pretty arrogant.
Lovely.
But I'm going to tell you later on in the video a better version of Elbaf. A version of Elbaf that actually incorporates Usopp in a proper way, sticking to the current paradigm of the story that Oda has established. But before that, I'm not going to stand here and sugarcoat the facts, because the facts are what they are. And the fact of the matter is that going into Elbaf, I had a lot of high expectations and a lot of things that I perceived were going to happen in this arc. And obviously I'm not the author of the story, and Oda has his own vision, Oda's vision, how the things will play out. But one thing I thought was going to be the case for sure, without question, was that the secondary main character of focus, I thought definitively, without question, going into Elbaf was going to be Usopp. When you first see the giant village and you see the reactions of everybody, you have the focus of Luffy and Usopp first and foremost. And I believe that Oda initially was going to give Usopp a tremendous amount of focus and limelight before a certain event that happened during Wano Country, where Oda made drastic changes to the entire series of One Piece. And I believe it's at this point in time where Oda decided to really consolidate a lot of the future content and bring it closer together in the story, while other elements were just entirely removed. One of the results is that Usopp does get shafted. This is not like the other videos I've done before where Usopp and Oda is screwing over Usopp. A lot less so now because of what happened with, let's say, Imu. Not for the chain of events that happens on Elbaf. Imu does not arrive to Elbaf at all and is fighting 1v1 against Loki and soon Luffy. Without that smack talk, Imu doesn't make the play to come to Elbaf. Some folks disagree because when Imu's going through the chain of events of fate, you don't have, of course, Usopp's words in there, but at the same time, Usopp has many lies that come true, and this happened to be a lie that came true only a chapter or two later after he said it. When Imu proclaimed that rulers should work from the background, work from the distance, and shoot their hands dirty, but here he is getting his hands dirty, bleeding, fighting Loki, soon to fight Luffy. And when Usopp said, listen, if you want to conquer a nation, you got to pull up. If you think that that has no value, then you have to say that Oda made a mistake. That Oda wrote those lines for Usopp, that Oda made that content by mistake, which I don't believe. I don't believe that Oda wrote that whole section for Usopp without any value at all. I don't think so. That's why I have to give it value. I take it at face value and I give it value because Oda gives it value because what Usopp says come true. But there in of itself also lies a problem, because it was weird to see Usopp like blitz tens of miles to get to that part of Elbaf to where Brook was fighting against Gunmu. But that's more of a continuity problem. The real issue is the fact that Oda gave Usopp that content, knowing, I think, full well that kind of have value in moving Imu, who is a candidate to be the final villain of the story, to Elbaf, but he probably felt like he had to do that because there was nothing else left for Usopp when this country meant the most for Usopp and for Luffy ever since Little Garden. When you watch the One Piece live action season 2, you are reminded in such a great way through Jacob's acting, through the events that go on Little Garden, of how important this place is to Usopp. Little Garden, which then jumps over to Elbaf, is quintessential for Usopp's dream. Not, okay, it's, let's say, the equivalent to Wano Country for Zoro, or Whole Cake Island to Sanji. It was beyond that. It was well beyond that. It was a quintessential location for Usopp's dream of becoming a brave warrior of the sea, because he views his masters Dory and Brogy as the embodiment of his dream. And Usopp, keep it a stack, Usopp is the weakest straw hat and will always be the weakest straw hat. Even though we saw recently episodes him pop off, Vincent Chance are doing some outstanding work for Usopp in Lego Mania, and you have that titanic explosion and the buildings get blown away as if Usopp himself fired off a galaxy impact like Garp. The way the buildings were getting blown away during the galaxy impact were the exact same way Usopp's gigantic skull grass bomb was operating in Lego Mania. So it was really cool seeing Usopp get some proper glaze on Elbaf. And Victor Chan says, well, question, one of the best in the game to give characters glaze. Absolutely. And so in the future, I'm pretty sure the anime will find some ways here and there to incorporate the characters more meaningfully in the story, but the anime can only do so much. They can't change the continuity of the story, which honestly at times I really wish they would, because sometimes Oda's vision ain't it. I was compelled to make another Usopp video because when I think about it more and more, we are approaching the end stages of this arc. If Oda said it's true during Jump Festa last year, this arc is going to end abruptly, maybe even during the middle of the fight between Luffy and Imu. Imu may be forced back to the Holy Land, and then they have to just squelch the fire, and that's it. And Usopp currently is knocked out, unable to do anything. So it could be the case here, where we literally end off this whole arc with a abrupt closure to the Luffy versus Imu fight. We save that for another time in the future, potentially, and we go on our merry way from there. And that's, wow. I'm not saying that's bad in of itself, but for Usopp's character, oh, that's tragic. Even though he has gotten something, and I am pleased with that something. It is something. It's something. But compared to other characters in their quote unquote arcs, right? Compared to Zoro on Wano Country, compared to Sanjo on Whole Cake Island, Usopp falls so far. He falls so far when the expectations from Little Garden were that this arc was going to be way more important than any other arc to Usopp, because Elbaf matters that much to his dream. And man, it would stand to be the case that coming in all, if I'm right, I hope I'm wrong, and we get, I don't know how, but we get more meaningful, substantive content for God Usopp. The post-time skip prognosis would be the arc that had the most value for Usopp would be Dressrosa. Freaking Dressrosa. Dressrosa, man. Out of all the arcs going into the post-time skip, that was not on my bingo book. And in the future, we could see Usopp get something similar to Let's Go with Frankie, where Frankie gets his love now in Elbaf, but I believe, honest to God, initially it was intended to happen on Egghead Island. But Oda made modifications to the entire story during the Road to Laugh Tale, and I believe that they pushed it back to Elbaf. I believe in my heart of hearts, my Kingdom Hearts, that Oda decided to take the Brook and Gunko stuff that probably would have been in a future arc, and he pushed it to Elbaf. The same thing for the Rock's flashback. I believe, honest to God, that the Rock's flashback was going to be in a future arc, but he squeezed into Elbaf. Incidences involving Big Mom, which from a continuity standpoint made a tremendous amount of sense, just considering how during the Big Mom flashback, we found out that Big Mom was treated like Voldemort, essentially, on Elbaf. She who should not be named. And yet here we are on Elbaf, and Big Mom gets maybe a line or two here and there from Gerd and other people, and that's really it. We find out that the shield homie that Goldberg uses is from Big Mom. Things of that sort. But that's it. It's nothing of great substance for Big Mom, even though in her flashback, it would indicate that we would have substantial ties with her and Elbaf. Especially knowing that Big Mom consumed the kids of the Lamb's house, and none of that's addressed at all to this day. Obviously, everyone knows I'm a big supporter of Yamato being on the crew. Yamato should have been here on Elbaf and on Egghead Island. But again, the Road to Laugh Tale, consolidate, we have to omit Yamato from the crew for the time being, because her being there makes the story longer. And the moments that I thought that Usopp was really building up for on Elbaf for the entire the post-time skip, a lot of these moments were squandered. A lot of these moments were omitted because we had to push stuff in there for Robin, for Brook, for Luffy. Loki needed a tremendous amount of sauce for Gabon with Zoro, and then Sanji, the hockey stuff. All these elements needed time and character focus, but we don't want to repeat in Oda's mind. We don't want to repeat of Wano Country, where we're stuck on for 4 years because there's too many characters and too many moving different parts. My expectations were high for sure, as high as the moon for Usopp on Elbaf. I think that as a longtime reader and watcher, I don't see how you couldn't have high expectations for Usopp on Elbaf. Moments where he should have been easily infused into, like for example, when you had Dory and Brogy turn into Diamond vs. Giants, Usopp plays no role at all in them going back to the regular selves. No role. He's on the completely wrong side of the island, near the Walrus School, when he should be where Zoro is. When you think about Zoro's involvement on that side of the island, no offense to Zoro, but Zoro isn't really needed to help the Diamond vs. Giants go back to normal. He's not necessary in that whole situation. Zoro could have been, let's say, with Chopper and Gabon and company, and let's say fight a horde of Diamond vs. Giants there, and having the exact same impact. On the flip side, if you have Usopp in that situation with the Diamond vs. Dory and Brogy specifically, and then they attack each other for the first time, not because of their giant will and pride, but Usopp talking and yelling, screaming to them in the same way that Usopp was yelling and screaming to Oimo and Kashi during Eni's lobby. And then through that speech, he got them on their side. The same way Bone Clay was cheering Gambare Mugiwara in Impel Down. In the same vein, you would have Usopp do something similar, and he would be the one to help Dory and Brogy regain some of their sanity, right? And so what I just said has way more meaningful impact for a character like Usopp, who values Dory and Brogy so much because he's seeing the men that embody his dream be tainted by the will of the devil. And then so someone who follows that same path would be able to bring them back to the right path. Again, no offense to Zoro, but his impact is just facing off of the Giants and killing them. They did themselves anyway. So they didn't really need Zoro there. Have Usopp be there instead, and bada bing, bada boom. And then later on, you could, let's say, Usopp worried about his other crewmates, and then he runs over to the same location to where Brook is fighting against Gunmu, but from the other side. And then you have Usopp say what he said to Imu. The impact of that moment with Imu, on top of him helping Dory and Brogy return back to normal, it galaxies better. And it's all in the paradigm of Usopp's character too. He won't go through some sort of crazy Super Saiyan 3 Zenkai boost and start diffing dudes. That's not Usopp's way. We've seen his way through the entirety of the pre-time skip and even some parts of the post-time skip. And Oda could have easily done that for Usopp in this arc. It would be even funny if you had, let's say, a line of Usopp really trying to glaze himself, calling himself the Lord of Destruction in the manga, the same way you had in the live action, when you had Usopp trying to do some stuff with Dory and Brogy. That already is a far superior outcome for Usopp's character without really even demeaning Zoro's character in the slightest, because again, the impact is the same, and you can still have, even fight against Zoro and so on and so forth, like these things can still play out, but it gives Usopp the leg he needs to shine. Even, let's say, in terms of power, there have been lies Usopp said before about him having conqueror's haki. Instead of keeping Usopp, let's say, at the party, maybe, let's say, Usopp knows to the giant castle there, and then Dory and Brogy are one of them, or let's say Omo and Kashi, one of those two, they take Usopp there, and then they run into Gabon, drunk, merry, having a good time. They run into Gabon, whether, let's say, it's during the fight with him and Luffy and Zoro, or after the case, doesn't matter. Oda could do it either way he wants to. But then you incorporate Usopp more in the Loki situation, and then now Usopp can be down there with, let's say, Zoro and Sanji and Luffy, along with Loki, because Usopp would, let's say, find out that Loki is someone that could destroy all Elbaf, and he would hate to see that, so he would actually confront him, let's say, in a drunken stupor. He would wind up being there somehow, some way, instead of wasting his time getting dipped by Gunko and then being wrapped up. You think about it. What does Usopp do? Think. What does Usopp do? What is the value of him being diffed by Gunko? He fires one explosion bomb, and then her body gets blown in half. That no value. Usopp has relatively low value, no value even, when he's getting dipped by Gunko. But then you incorporate him into a situation with Loki, which again involves his love for Elbaf and the countrymen here, and Dory and Brogy, his masters, because Loki is someone that's the sun god of destruction, quote unquote. And then if Oda wants to really give Usopp some haki glaze, Usopp could get more inklings about his own haki through someone like Gabon, who is proficient at observation haki. And even if there is a potential that Usopp could awaken Conqueror's haki in the future of the story, potentially, Usopp could glean some information from that, or that could be, like, say, in the back of his mind when he found out about how he has to be mindful of using that against immortals. And I'm not saying that he would have Conqueror's Haki, but it would be like a way to kind of conjoin the lie of him having Conqueror's Haki to a potential future where he could awaken not the infusion stuff, but like at least like the knocking out stuff, right? And then so maybe I'm capping here, but this, based on what Oda's done so far in the arc where his character is being hyped up to an even higher level than Zoro in Wano Country and Sanji on Whole Cake Island, even Frankie on Egget Island, and so on. His impact is on a higher level, on a higher level than even Dressrosa at that point in time, without much combat at all. And it all works perfectly, not even undercutting other characters in the arc. Matter of fact, even if Usopp's not fighting against Gunko, it gives other characters like Robin or Jinbei or Brook more time to shine, or Nami more time to shine against Gunko, even though they would still lose. The whole point here is that Usopp could have been done a lot better this arc, for sure. The idea of super yoked out Zenkai Usopp choking out Imu, it's a fun idea, but it's a representation essentially of Usopp getting the limelight that he deserved on Elbaf, which he did deserve for sure. And Oda falling, I think, in this arc so far. Yes, the Imu stuff is good, I won't deny that, but nowhere near enough for what Oda had established prior to in the story. And I would say my version of Elbaf is a better version of Elbaf for at least the character that needed a lot of that limelight in Elbaf. But hey, I could be dragging my part, I could be capping there. Let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. If you enjoy your boy's video content, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, give your boy a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you dislike the video, and of course, join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys and gals on the flip side.
See you. Bye-bye.